Every pattern you repeat or every choice you can't explain and every version of yourself you keep returning to has a blueprint. Welcome to the Echo Principle, where we map the unseen architecture of human behavior. If you think carefully, you belong here, so drop a like and make sure to subscribe to our channel. On March 13, 1964, a young woman named Kitty Genovese was attacked outside her apartment building in New York City. The attack lasted over half an hour. And according to the original reporting, 38 of her neighbors heard or witnessed some portion of what happened. Not one of them called the police until it was too late. The story horrified America. And the question it produced was not about the attacker. It was about the 38. What kind of person hears a woman screaming and does nothing? What kind of moral failure produces that response? What was wrong with those people? Here is what nobody told you. The question itself was wrong. And the answer, when researchers finally found it, was far more disturbing than any story about individual moral failure could ever be. Because it wasn't about those people specifically. It was about people. All of them. Including you. Including me. John Darley and Latané were two social psychologists at Columbia University who read the Genovese story and had a different reaction from everyone else. Instead of asking what was wrong with those 38 people, they asked what was it about the situation that produced that behavior. What in the structure of that moment made inaction the most likely outcome regardless of who was standing there? So they ran an experiment. They brought participants into a room, told them they would be having a discussion over an intercom system about college life, and then during the conversation one of the other participants, actually a recording, began having what sounded like a seizure. When the participant believed they were the only one who could hear it, 85% of them got up and sought help within the first minute. When they believed there were 4 other people also listening, only 31% responded. And many of those waited several minutes before doing anything. Same emergency. Same people. Completely different behavior. The only variable was how many other people they believed were present. Darley and Latané called this diffusion of responsibility. The psychological mechanism through which the presence of others dilutes each individual's sense of personal obligation to act. When you are the only witness to something, the moral weight of it lands entirely on you. When there are 10 witnesses, each person unconsciously calculates their share of that weight as 1/10. And 1/10 of an emergency does not feel like an emergency. But diffusion of responsibility is only half of the mechanism. The other half is something called pluralistic ignorance. And it is in some ways even more fascinating. When something ambiguous happens in public, we do not just rely on our own interpretation of events. We look at the people around us to calibrate our response. If everyone around you seems calm, your nervous system concludes that calm is the appropriate response. The situation must not be serious. Other people know something you don't. Their composure is information. The problem is that everyone is doing this simultaneously. Every person in the crowd is looking at everyone else and reading their outward calm as evidence that nothing is wrong. While internally each person may feel uncertain or even alarmed. The group produces a collective display of calm that nobody actually feels. And that collective performance of composure becomes the social reality everyone responds to. This is pluralistic ignorance. A situation in which a group of people hold private beliefs that contradict the public norm they are collectively maintaining. Everyone thinks something is wrong. No one acts like it. And so nothing happens. Now take the Kitty Genovese story and put these two mechanisms inside it. Neighbors who were genuinely uncertain about what they were hearing. Neighbors who looked out their windows, saw no one else responding, and concluded from that absence of response that perhaps it wasn't as serious as it sounded. neighbors whose sense of personal responsibility was fractured across 38 people until each individual share was too small to feel like enough reason to act. The story stops being a story about 38 monsters and starts being a story about a specific, predictable, reproducible pattern of human behavior under specific conditions. Which is considerably more frightening. Because monsters are rare. These conditions are not. Here is where the research gets genuinely unsettling. Darley and Latané ran variation after variation of their experiment. They changed the setting, the emergency, the demographics of the participants. The results were consistent across all of them. And one finding in particular has stayed with researchers ever since. When participants were told before the experiment that the bystander effect existed, and that they might be susceptible to it, their response rates improved but did not normalize. Even people who intellectually understood the mechanism, who knew they were in an experiment, who had been specifically warned, still showed reduced helping behavior in group conditions compared to alone. The knowledge partially counteracted the effect. It did not eliminate it. The mechanism runs beneath the level of conscious decision-making. It is not a choice. It is a social reflex so deeply embedded in the architecture of group behavior that awareness alone cannot fully override it. There is a modern dimension to this that Darley and Latané could not have anticipated. The bystander effect has migrated online. Studies on social media behavior consistently show that content depicting someone in distress receives more views and engagement when it is reaching a large audience, and less intervention per viewer. The same diffusion of responsibility. The same pluralistic ignorance. Scaled to millions of people watching the same thing and each one assuming someone else will do something about it. The viral video of someone being harassed on a subway platform. The comment section of someone in obvious psychological crisis. The post from someone reaching out who gets 100 sympathetic reactions and no one who actually calls. The bystander effect does not require physical proximity. It only requires the awareness that others are also present and not acting. But here is what the research also found, and what rarely makes it into the popular version of this story. The bystander effect is not inevitable. It has a specific and reliable off switch. Direct address. When one person in a crowd breaks the diffusion by making direct eye contact with another specific individual and assigning them a task, the mechanism short circuits. You in the red jacket, call an ambulance. Not a general appeal to a crowd. A specific instruction to a specific person. The moment the responsibility is no longer shared, it becomes owned. And ownership produces action at a rate that closely approximates the lone bystander scenario. This is why emergency response training teaches people to point at individuals rather than appeal to groups. Because the research is unambiguous. Crowds do not save people. Individuals within crowds, when specifically addressed, do. What this tells us about human behavior is something more layered than the simple moral failure narrative. We are not individually heartless. We are socially wired in ways that produce heartless outcomes under specific conditions. The same mechanisms that make us exquisitely sensitive to social cues, that allow us to coordinate and cooperate at the scale that built civilization, also make us capable of standing at a window listening to a woman scream and concluding from the silence of our neighbors that perhaps it isn't our place to intervene. The Kitty Genovese story was misreported. Later researchers found the original witness count was exaggerated and the timeline was more complicated than the initial coverage suggested. But it produced the right question at the right time. And the answer that question generated has saved more lives than we will ever be able to count. Because understanding the bystander effect is what allows you to override it. To recognize when you are in a crowd and feel the pull of diffusion. To resist the pluralistic ignorance of everyone else's performed composure. To be the person who points and says directly, "You, specifically you, help me with this." That is not a small thing. In the right moment it is everything. This has been the Echo Principle. Make sure to subscribe if you liked the video.